Hey everyone, I am so excited to announce that Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All is now a best-selling book on USA Today, America's newspaper. It's also in the #1 position on several categories at Amazon, and I can't tell you how much this means to me for this book to be received with so much love. Thank you so much for all of your support. Please keep the love coming. I get multiple emails a day from you on how much you're enjoying this book. And as I mentioned, my favorite format for it is Audible. I read the book myself. It's by far and away the hardest speaking job I've ever had. And the afterword, written by Mark Gober, and the forward, written by JD Messenger. But also this hardcover is just absolutely amazing in terms of the quality. And you can also get it on Kindle. Please support the work, and I hope it moves you as it moved me in writing it. It is my love letter to humanity, it is my soul song, and it is my manifesto all in one. Thank you so much.
I see AI as just the next wave of technology. When the internet started, as it became part of something that could be used for marketing, instead of saying, no, we're not going to do that, we said, how do we do it? We would search everywhere for people who were interested in it, who could actually make it happen. The philosophy at my company was always to say, what's next? How do we innovate? Whatever's coming down our way, we better learn how to do it or be the first. We were always curious about how technology could take us to the next place, because if it could help us relate better or faster or more efficiently with the end consumer, we want to know about it. So I look at AI as, I hope it does help people. I hope it enables technology to move in a faster way. In a few years, it'll just be that one more thing, and who knows what's next.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Love Conquers Fear podcast. It has been a very action-packed time, both with the book being out. It's awesome that it's become a USA Today bestseller. I'm doing a ton of speaking on the book. I was just in Aspen, and you'll see a bonus episode coming out where I was speaking alongside Jamie Metzel. Jamie was on episode 18 of the podcast. He's a great author. He's speaking on his book, The AI 10 Commandments. I was speaking, of course, on Love Conquers Fear, Humanity, AI, and the Age of Abundance for All. And it was moderated by a woman named Shadia, who is from Lebanon. She's a Muslim woman. She's also a Henry Crown Fellowship, like me and Jamie, and just really, really well done moderation by her. And we had a lot of fun with it. And we had 200 people in Aspen attend, both from the Aspen Institute fellowships, as well as from the Aspen community. It became an Aspen community event, which was really special. We honored Josh Bear out there. I really miss him so much. He is truly a brother to me. He nominated me for the Henry Crown Fellowship. Also, on the AI front, it has been super, super busy. There's been a lot of discussion about AI and open source. A Chinese company named Moonshot AI actually came out with a new model called Kimi K3. And Kimi K3 is actually almost as powerful as Anthropic's Fable, which you may remember the US government got Anthropic to pull access to that because Amazon was a whistleblower and said it's too powerful, it needs more guardrails. That put an 18-day pause on Anthropic Fable being available to the public, and then it was available. 18 days, not that long of a time. It was good actually to see that happen, in my opinion. I think we need to be very intentional with these systems and hold ourselves accountable. And then ChatGPT Soul went through the same process of approval by the US government to then be released. But now China has thrown this whole model in the ring to create an open source model through this company Moonshot that is almost as powerful as those models. And Bill Gurley, who's here in Austin, is one of the most legendary investors of all time. He used to work at Benchmark as the general partner there and went to UT and got his MBA. I'm also a proud UT grad. And he has written a op-ed in the Washington Post about how it was inevitable that AI would be open source. I agree. I've said that since the beginning of this movement. When President Trump announced Stargate on January 21st of last year, that model that they were announcing there alongside Sam Altman and Mayoshi Son and Larry Ellison for Stargate was $500 billion in funding to race ahead to create AGI as fast as possible in this kind of existential seeming race versus China. The first country to get AGI would, quote unquote, rule the world. That was what Putin said in Russia. And the day before President Trump made that announcement on January 20th of last year, that's when DeepSeek announced the R1 model, which is another Chinese company, which was vastly more powerful than GPT-4. And you may remember that after OpenAI announced ChatGPT on November 30th of 2022, it was just 4 months later that the moratorium call to pause AI development was sounded, and over 30,000 people signed that letter, including some of the most famous people in AI. So we're really in very interesting territory here with Kimi K3, and I think that it is going to happen that the majority of humanity is going to have access to open source AI. I think that that is very much in our future. I've talked about it many times on this podcast. If you think about when we as humanity discovered fire, we could not just keep it for our tribe. We had to share it because it was too good not to share. I think AI is too good not to share. But really what my book is about and the talk I gave in Aspen is we need to upgrade ourselves because it's how we use technology that matters. And if our core nature was horrible, then we wouldn't be here recording this podcast because we would have already burned everybody alive because we discovered fire and you could use it for good or bad. So I think our core nature is good. We do have real challenges to overcome. But I do agree with Bill Gurley that this was a move that was bound to happen, and we'll muddle our way through it like we do everything. And it's good to see. I mean, it's crazy to imagine that we're still just 3.5 years since the launch of ChatGPT. What happened next is that Jensen Huang of NVIDIA signed a letter in his first ever post on X saying that he really backs the open weight models. And then all the model leaders piled on and wrote their own op-eds and basically said that they also support open weight or open source models. So that's really interesting. I cover this, by the way, in my weekly newsletter called the Superfecta Signal. You can get that for free on Substack as well as LinkedIn. And there's no ads on it other than, I guess you'd say, an ad for my book. But I come out with that every week because it's the news that I always wanted to read in this exponential of exponential times versus the constant dystopia pushed to me if I just sit back and am a passive kind of quote unquote consumer of the media. And that's not an attack on the free press. It's that the algorithms are constantly trying to hijack our biology. It's the laziest form of capitalism, and it happens with food, it happens with social media, it happens with the opioid crisis, it happens with all types of things where companies have put profits over people, and we need to remake capitalism in the image of conscious capitalism, as I talk about in chapter 9 of my book. But anyways, really a big, big time on the AI front, and I cover all of that in my newsletter, but tune in to some of this news for yourself. It's a very exciting time on the AI front. I'm super, super excited about today's guest. We both do a lot for UT Austin. That's where I met my soulmate, Deborah. We just celebrated 30 years of marriage. And it's just an amazing school. I just went out last night with my niece, Naomi, who just graduated from there with top honors. And we went to go see Olivia Rodrigo and the ACL, Austin City Limits TV taping. It was really special to celebrate her graduation there. But my guest today is someone I've wanted to have on since the beginning of the podcast. She was actually on my daughter Rachel's podcast, Radiant Resilience, back in 2024. She was the 8th episode. I was the 7th, right before her. So here we go. Gay Gaddis, it's good to have you here.
Hi, Brett. Good to see you.
Yeah, I really appreciate our friendship so much. And,
same here.
And, maybe to start this off, I'd love to I want to get into your book and your background because your book is really fantastic. But maybe we just start off talking about Josh.
Yeah. Well, as an entrepreneur, and that's what I became in my life.
Yeah.
I always had such a great admiration for Josh because of what he did to encourage, teach, and provide a place for entrepreneurs to really test their wings, and to get help. And so it wasn't just, giving money, which he did in certain cases, but it was really about nurturing and some hard love sometimes to people who were trying to start their own businesses, their own ideas. And so he just nurtured creativity, ideas, new thinking, and was such an inspiration to thousands.
Yeah.
And I just always felt so blessed to know him. He invited me one time to come in and do some mentoring for some young entrepreneurs from UT.
Yeah.
And it was a great evening. And there he was, with his dog, walking around, being kind of in the background while we all did our thing. But he enabled so many people to find their dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, he's had, there have been thousands and thousands of messages coming out on how he touched so many people, which has constantly moved me to tears. Like, as soon as I'm like past the tears, because I miss him so much, I've known him for 22 years. I continue to see these messages that really just move me back to tears because he just did so much for so many people, including me. He was my first investor in Bizarre Voice.
Yeah. Good move.
Yeah, it was a good move. He was very generous in saying that really helped seed the start of Capital Factory and the purchase of the office space, in the Omni building. But it's really hard to fathom that he's not with us, at least in physical form, anymore. And I'm staying very close to Amy, and it's just a really hard thing. I mean, in Aspen, we honored him with lots of stories about how he impacted all of us as Henry Crown Fellows, and it's just incredible.
Now he's leaving such a legacy that unfortunately had to end his life so soon.
Yeah.
When I found out about the crash and that he had died, I was just in shock. I still am.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine not walking into Austin 100 or walking into Capital Factory or being anywhere where Josh would be and him not there.
I know.
It just will be such a hole, for all of us. And it almost makes me cry now talking about him because he just had this amazing ability to give and not take credit, which so many people can't do that,
Right.
But he did. And he was just kind of like I said, the enabler for so many. So he will not be easily forgotten.
Yeah.
He will live on in the businesses and the hearts. And I think of his family too. I lost my father when I was 13. And, when you're a teenager and losing a father, it's a really difficult thing to do and go through. So I think of them quite often.
Wow. I actually did not know that story that you lost your father that young. What happened there?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll make it as short as possible. He signed up for the Navy because he graduated from high school at 15. He was a valedictorian, and he was a true genius. I mean, on the testing and everything. But he ended up in the Navy at 16. They shipped him off to the Philippines, and he was in hand-to-hand combat with the Japanese. And we didn't know this until after he died. When he came back, he ended up in the Corps of Engineers, became an engineer, Gulf Oil business and all that. That's why I'm a Texan, because they moved to Texas for that. But my dad carried from the experience in the Philippines deeper scars than what we saw on the surface. He had a terrible scar on his neck, which he never talked about. And so through my childhood and all through my life until he died, there were some really rough times. He had PTSD. No one talked about it.
Right.
And so,
that probably wasn't even a term back then.
And these guys were taught to come back from World War II, get on with your life, have a family, get back in the workforce, and just leave it behind. Well, they didn't leave it behind. It was too traumatic. So he went through a lot of issues because of that. And he still was very functioning on the outside, but at our home, sometimes it was really violent and rough. And he had an alcohol problem, and all these things were, systematic because of that. But after he died, Brett, this guy came from California who was on the beach in the Philippines with him in the Navy. And he said, after all these people left our house, he came in and he said, I'm going to talk to you and your mom. And he did. He said, do you know what? Your dad was dead. The Japanese in hand-to-hand combat slashed his throat. They put him in a body bag. And when the medics came through and I was with them, something was moving in that bag. They opened it up and he said, let's give it the old college try. And they stitched him up and he went on.
Wow.
And so we knew that he'd had severe trauma like that. So many people, go through things like that, but it was hard. And so because of that, his drinking and then eventually taking Valium for anxiety, it just was a cocktail that killed him. And so he died. And I was just barely 13.
Wow. I never knew that. I mean, it partially describes why you're so badass, why you're so strong.
Well, I will say this, because of his death, he had just started a new company, an entrepreneur, and it was going real well. He had taken land as payment because it was a surveying engineering firm. And so we didn't have a lot of cash at the time. And my mom had a kindergarten, which made very little money that she owned, also an entrepreneur. And so she went back to teaching in the public school. Well, you can imagine back, in those days what she made, not much. So I started working at 13 and I learned how to manage money. And my mother was never good at it. So I managed money for my mom and me, put my way through college, did all these things because I had to. And but sometimes I say the reason I became so good with making money and, having a business and all the things I did was that I kind of had to, And so his death enabled me in a strange way to be much stronger and much more fiscally responsible than I would have been.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. I mean, my grandfather grew up during the Great Depression, and his father was an alcoholic that deserted the family. And so my great-grandfather, I don't even know anything about him other than that. And he, my grandfather was the oldest, and he had to raise his siblings with my great-grandmother. And that led to his whole career being at UT Austin. He was one of the great mathematics professors there and spent his entire time there, except for 1 year he went to USC, and he's like, I got to get back.
Get back to Austin.
He became, really legendary professor there. And it was so cool. Like when I was entrepreneur in residence at UT, one of the things that happened there is this guy that leads this international standards board for mathematics said, are you James Manhurt's grandson? And I was like, yes, I am. He's like, can I take you to lunch? And so we went to lunch, and he told me how he changed the entire arc of his career, how much he was like selfless. He taught the most advanced mathematics classes at UT, but he never let people grandstand. He was like, hey, everybody can figure this out. Like, let's just, and it was really cool because he basically gave me a window that I didn't have. Like, he raised me to really love mathematics, but I didn't have this window of what he was like in the classroom. And he was very giving and loving in the classroom. And so I think that I always give my mom so much credit for putting a lot of love in my heart, but my grandfather did too, from how much love he showed.
So good you had a chance to spend time with him.
Oh yeah. It was incredible. And it really eventually led to me taking that post as entrepreneur in residence to say, well, I'm going to try this on because, he did it, and just see how it goes. I would love to just talk about, your journey with T3. I think it was the largest independent agency owned by a woman, right? In America. Yeah. And just kind of how you got to that point. And the reason I've got the cowboy Brett, this is a first in the podcast here. This is my mom's favorite photo of me. It proves that, yes, indeed, I did grow up in Austin, Texas, when it was 260,000 people. It's 2.6 million now. But, your book, Cowgirl Power, is really, really great. And it's been super fun. And I love the fact that you read it on Audible. I know how hard that is. I did the same with my book. And
it's extremely difficult.
Extremely difficult. You and I were talking about this before we went on camera, that it's the hardest public speaking job I've ever had. And I think you said the same. Mm-hmm. But, just tell me a bit about your roots growing up in Texas, and what led you to start the ad agency in the first place, and why was that like your big calling?
Well, I was born in Houston, Texas. My dad was in the oil business there. It was very big times for oil business in the state of Texas. And so I ended up in this little town because Gulf moved my dad and my mom there. And my mother had never lived in a small town. This is a town of less than 10,000 people, Liberty, Texas. Mm-hmm. But we somehow adapted it. And my dad wanted me to grow up there because he thought it would be good for me to be in a small town and know people and kind of insulated from the big city. So my godfather was a rice farmer and very close to me and his wife, my godmother. And so he took me out from the time I was barely walking and put me on horseback with him. And then later I'd ride my own. And I just started learning about cowboy ways and how people really used their horses and their talents. It wasn't just rodeo. I mean, it was really the true thing. And I learned the values of people like that. I mean, you talk about salt of the earth, just great values. And the women and men who I grew up with were, I danced my first dance with a Texas Ranger, and he reminded me, he said, "So Gay?" I was like 5 years old. He said, "You can always tell someone that you danced your first dance with a Texas Ranger."
Yeah.
I said, "All right, Mr. Eccles." But
you're close to the Texas Rangers now too. We'll get into your UT
all my
prowess.
UT friends.
It's amazing.
But it's really was interesting because I just learned it and lived it, and saw so many people that spent their life, really being cowboys and cowgirls. So I've always had that inside me. And as I grew up, I never let it go. I always had the values with me. It always stayed with me. And so later on, and we can talk about, I can go back to T3 and how that started, but fast forward quickly into Cowgirl Power. One of the things I was so fascinated with when I decided to write the book was people said, you need to write your story. Not many women have done what you've done. You need to put it out there and tell them your values and get it out there. And I thought, you know what though? What I've been inspired by so much my whole life were real cowgirls. So I went to the Cowgirl Museum in Fort Worth, reacquainted myself with these historic women who were amazing. They really were. Like late 1800s, early 1900s, they were competing against men in rodeos. They were show people. They were just incredible. And just their values and what they did. And I said, okay, I'm going to write the book with those values, and I'll feature one of them before each chapter. So the book isn't really about them, but they are just an example of, wow, if they could do it then, we can certainly do this now. So that was where all that
very different times back then.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about T3 though?
Yes,
so
I do.
T3 was an interesting thing. We talk about the University of Texas, and most people think I was a business major or something else, but I was actually an art major at Texas. I majored in fine arts, and I could draw, and I was really a good painter, and that's what I did in college. And so when I got out, there's not many jobs for an artist. I always laughed and said, well, I guess I could go to Jackson Square in New Orleans and draw portraits, but that's not going to be very lucrative. So I got in the ad business many years ago because we still had to illustrate and draw, way before all the computers did all that stuff for us. But so I got in the business and I loved it, and I was in PR companies and I worked for different types of businesses, and finally came back to Austin. Sleepy town. We're talking about the 80s. Very sleepy little town.
It was.
And it was.
A lot of people don't believe me.
Well, I know. We could tell stories.
My first concert was Willie Nelson. I was 4 years old. Okay. Which was amazing, by the way.
Jerry Jeff back then, But nevertheless, came back here and I thought, oh my gosh, it's the end of my career. But I needed to come home for a family business reason and family. So I was here, ended up working for an agency that I helped grow. And we grew it. Here came, though, barreling at us, just as things were really taking off, the late 80s. And there was a horrific recession in the whole country. But Texas was particularly hurt.
It was caused by oil, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that. Well, the whole economy collapsed for a while. It was a really serious one. And so real estate wasn't worth the dirt it was built on. All the savings and loans failed. I mean, we were in failure. So I wrote a business plan inside this other company thinking I can turn this around. And I just had such a passion for this.
Yeah.
And so I did one thing wrong, though. As you know, if you're trying to bring people into the way you think, you don't just spring things on them. You kind of bring them along, right? Well, I didn't do that. I did this outside of the president of the company's real knowledge. And so I thought, well, this is going to be great. I'm going to go to our next management meeting and say, I've got a great idea, and everybody's sitting around, and we're going to be able to turn the company around.
Right.
Well, everybody's going, yeah, I really like those ideas. That's really good. So I go back to my office feeling very excited. We're going to do this. And then about an hour later, he comes wandering in and says, you know what? I'm not going to support that plan. I'm not with you. Walked out. And so I was furious.
Right.
Because, I mean, I'd put my heart and soul in this.
Nothing else.
I mean, I believed in it.
No, but he didn't say anything else.
No,
it was just like, why he didn't like the plan.
No, it was just, no. Later I realized why, and I'll tell you. But so I sat there and I called my husband, who I'd only been married to several months, and I said, Lee, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. And so he said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I said, first I'm going to go quit because I cannot be here. And he said, well, you better come up with something. I said, well, I guess I'll just have to go do it on my own.
All right.
And he said, Gay, if you really want to do it, I mean, we're all broke at this point, in the recession.
We have nothing to lose. Everything.
He said, look, go for it, and I'm for you. Okay. So off I go, huffing and puffing down the hall, quit. Within 1 month.
On that day?
Did you that quit? Day.
Wow.
I did.
Okay.
And I was incorporated within 1 month. I had 3 clients I'd convinced to come along. And I had a little tiny office that I convinced this woman who inherited this property. She'd never run property, but I went to her with hat in hand and said, would you please give me this 1,000 square feet? I can't pay you right now, but I promise I'll pay you back. I'll pay it. And so she gave me the space. I hired 2 people and off we went. And that's what happened. It was 1989.
Wow.
I was really young, early 30s, like 31, I think. And no one was doing stuff like this in a recession. It just seemed crazy.
Right.
But I was just determined. Failure was not going to be an option. My kids needed it. My family, everybody. We were depending on me making this work.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of dug in and off we went. And one thing led to another, which I can tell you more about what happened to us that changed everything if you want to. But I'll let you ask the questions.
Yeah, I do want to ask you that. But one thing I want to say that is a neat synchronicity in our backgrounds that I didn't realize is that, I started Bazaar Voice in the ashes of the .com bust.
Oh, yes.
And at that point in time, that was actually when I first met Josh.
Yeah.
It was 2003. I actually moved back to Austin from the Bay Area on July 4th. I literally driving the moving truck with Deborah and seeing the fireworks as we come into Austin.
Oh, wow.
And one of the first people I met was Josh Bear. And it was almost free office space. Everything was decimated. All the best people were available. And so those types of periods, historically, you never wish for those types of periods. They're like super painful to go through. But those types of periods historically are where some of the best companies are born because necessity is the mother of invention. It was kind of like you growing up with your father, crossing over early, is that you had to help your mom figure out things like balancing the checkbook and things that turned out to be great business skills later on when you started your own company.
Your point about people being available. So you think about it, not only was Texas recession, we had recession going on all over.
Yeah.
So amazing creative people were cut loose. People were getting laid off right and left. And so as we were starting off, we could hire freelancers that were perfect for this job, for that, and I couldn't hire them full time because I really didn't need their expertise 24/7 to work on one thing. So we cobbled together some of the best freelancers in the country. We won 2 national Addies within the first 2 years we were in business. Wow. I mean, we just hit it out. I mean, it was so exciting.
Which customers were those?
You wouldn't believe this. One of them was for a brick company. And so our Addie was, we decided instead of doing, like a lot of outdoor billboards, littering the highways. We painted a van to look exactly like a big brick. And it was the brick van. And it would drive up and down all over Texas and show up at trade shows. And so it was called an out of home, award. And so it was a national Eddie for that because it was so creative at the time.
Yeah.
No one thought of it. The other one was for the Salvation Army. And it was probably one of the most, and then later we won a lot of others, but these early ones were really important to me. And the first one was, that we won actually, was for the Salvation Army. Now think through the recession. They couldn't pay the mortgage on the building. Everything that they just built downtown, everything was just going south. And so people on the board of directors came to me. Here, I just started this company. The last thing you need is pro bono,
Right.
I said, we can't do it. We're just barely getting by. Well, they said, please do something. So we ended up doing a full campaign for the Salvation Army to help them raise the money.
Yeah.
And one of the ideas, which turned out to be brilliant, was to do a newspaper ad, a full, double truck, back when everybody read newspapers.
Yeah.
And all it said was, to you, it's a newspaper. To the homeless, it's a blanket.
Wow.
Salvation Army.
Oh my gosh. That's
Okay.
that's beautiful.
It was amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so, but here's the funny part, because I had to go to the Statesman. Well, they couldn't pay for a double truck ad 3 times in the Statesman. So I had to go, the editor had to go, their board. And I said, I need you to donate the space. I need the double truck.
Right.
So they sat there for a while. And I said, well, how about, we have that smaller one that's the TV guide that's about this big. I said, no, that didn't work. That's not a blanket. That's a washcloth. I mean, I need the full thing.
Right.
So finally, the greatest thing in negotiation is to sit and not say a word.
Right.
So I just sat there, and
Yeah.
finally they looked at each other and back and forth, and they said, "You got it."
Yeah.
So
awesome.
it ended up happening, and
Yeah.
it just made a huge impact, and we
Wow.
raised so much money. It was incredible. So that was kind of our first Addy, but it's a great story.
It's a great story. I mean, that's amazing. And so really from that point on, was it just kind of up and to the right, or were there big bumps along the way?
A lot of bumps, of
Yeah.
course. You don't start a company, but here's the thing, for all my friends and all of you that have these massive companies that raise billions of dollars and all that, I bootstrapped the whole company the whole time.
I know you
just
did.
from
Yeah.
the day
My
one.
parents bootstrapped from the time I was
I mean,
born,
it's just,
actually.
I think it came from just my desperation as a child to make sure I had everything was covered. I didn't want to be in debt. And so we did it that way. But along the way, in 1992, now remember I started in 89, 92, I got a call from a friend of mine who went to the University of Texas with me. And he said, I'm out at Dell. It's just the Wild West out here, and it was. And so he said, I don't like some of the advertising that's going on with us. Can you come out and talk to us? So I did. And we ended up little tiny project by project, and before we knew it, we were running all the small business for Dell. I mean, all the catalogs, all the online, everything.
Yeah.
We did their first email campaigns. We learned with Michael Dell when he came in and said, we're going to sell on the internet. I ran back to the office and I said, look, if we don't learn this internet thing, this is in 92, 3. Now,
Right.
remember how far back?
Oh, yeah.
I said, we're going to lose Dell because Michael's going this way. And
Yeah.
if we're not going that way, we're out. So we figured it out together. And it became the most incredible thing. But people criticized us in the industry, Brett. They said, oh, everything you do looks like a slot machine. It's ugly, it's clunky, it's, below the line. That's what advertising people call direct mail and anything we were doing on the internet. That's below the line. The cool stuff is the TV and the beautiful magazine
Right, the
ads and all
flashy,
that.
yep.
Yeah. So, but we lived in the below the line. We still did above the line stuff, but we lived down there for a long time, but we learned everything as we went along.
Yeah.
And so it became the Trojan horse for us that I could go into these big Fortune 100 companies and say, look, we have bottom line results I can show you, and this is what you should be looking into.
Yeah.
Get out of this, move over here, give us a chance. And they'd give us a few projects, and before we know it, we'd just eat from within and
Right.
take over. It was amazing how it worked.
Yeah.
And so it was an amazing experience, and I just happened to be here, and Dell was little, and we were too, and that's
That's
the story.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to be able to ride up what was probably the fastest growing company in Texas, like maybe ever.
I know.
And one of the things that
And it was rough, Brett.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty sometimes, but like I said, it was the Wild West out there. But
Yeah.
what I always loved about them is they'd say, let's just get 80% right, just get it out there.
Right.
And if we mess up on the other 20%, we'll figure it out later. But we're going to miss a market opportunity if we just don't get it, just try, just get it out there. So we were just like prototyping and blowing and going, and it was just amazing how fast it went.
That's awesome. You know, one of the things, I don't think we've talked about this in my background, but I worked with a lot of customers with an amazing team at Core Metrics prior to Bizarre Voice. And one of the companies we worked with was Polo Ralph Lauren and Eddie Bauer. And Eddie Bauer, I remember us, actually it was Polo Ralph Lauren, I remember us going in and they would spend every Monday for 4 hours talking about this kind of above the line thing on the catalog that, you know, was the really flashy, you know, kind of homepage image, but it was on the print catalog, and then it would be mirrored, you know, on the website. And we showed them through Core Metrics that only 4% of people ever clicked on that and ever bought anything. And that all the revenue was coming from the below the line stuff.
Yes, and you could prove it. See,
yes, and so that really transformed like the way these meetings happen, because now you're bringing data. Like intuition can be really powerful, but it doesn't always mean it's right. Sometimes it's misguided, where people are saying, well, of course people think this way. They've always thought that way, but they don't have the data to actually prove it. And where data meets intuition, then it's like super powerful.
Yes, and that was what was so powerful with what we did with Dell. We measured everything. And they always had the mantra, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And we lived that.
Yeah.
So we knew how to measure everything. We even had back-end info on their sales data. We knew exactly what was working, and we moved things on the fly. But I'm kind of laughing now talking to you about this, because one of our big clients became Marriott Corporate. So we had all the brands of Marriott, all their hotel brands.
Yeah.
And we were hired to do the digital as they started creeping into the digital world. And they had an agency in New York who shot all the photography for magazine ads and, you know, the brochures and that sort of thing. And one of their clever ads, and it worked in print, was this guy delivering a pair of shoes to a man polished, and he didn't even ask for it. It was like Marriott extra, you know, touches we do. But his head wasn't it. It was just his hands in the shoes, and you could see part of his legs and his feet. And so they sent us these images, and my team immediately said, we can't put a headless man in this on the internet. It just looks ridiculous.
Right.
And so we had to start working slowly with all these companies, say, let us shoot the digital assets.
Yeah.
Let us shoot for online, because you're not giving us what we need. But all those days were so interesting and painful in some ways, but yet we were all growing and learning about how do you make this medium work. And most companies didn't know how to do it.
Right.
So it was exciting. It really was.
One of the things that I love about your book is the real focus on women having agency and believing in their own ability versus being in a victim mindset of the circumstance. And there's no doubt, even in 2026, that we live in a more patriarchal society in America. I mean, you can see it in the corporate boards, you can see it
worldwide.
in the executive teams, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, one of the chapters in my book that I really love is chapter 8 on the objectification of women. And I cover the millennia of suffering that's come out of that root. It's kind of like the great othering, where half of humanity has been objectified, you know, kind of testosterone dominance, versus the age that we're in right now, which is all about the rise of the intelligence age and the female brain. I talk about the differences between the male brain and the female brain, but the female brain, we learned this when we had kids. We went to a YPO event, and there was a great speaker on this showing the differences. In a rest state is like much more lit up than the male brain. And it makes the female brain much better as information gathering and information processing. So it's kind of like perfectly wired for the age that we're in. But, you know, I talk a lot in that chapter about how women didn't have the right to vote until about 100 years ago, but there was an asterisk on that. It wasn't for women of color. That happened much later. Women didn't have the right to have a checking account until the 1970s in America.
Yeah.
Women didn't have the right to vote in Switzerland until 1972. I was really shocked to find that out.
I didn't know that, and I didn't have family there.
I know. I would just think like Switzerland, of course, like they would be very evolved on this, no? And so I love like your book in this way, because a big part of the Love Conquers Fear book is the agency within us all, like the agency to choose the future we want, to create heaven on earth if we decide to through these technologies. We have the free will. But maybe just talk about that a bit in the book, because you're a living embodiment of that and such a success story, and have been celebrated so many times all over the place, not just in Texas, but at UT and everywhere else. Like, you've won so many awards. It's been really amazing for me to see your career. You're a great, great role model. But I'm just curious, like, if you can unpack that a bit for people watching or listening to this in terms of how you see agency.
It's a very important concept in the book, because I could go back through my entire life and say, well, I couldn't have done that because of this, or women weren't able to do this. I just believed in what I was doing, and I didn't let anything stop me. And there were some obstacles. I'm not going to say there were not.
Sure.
And I still to this day can be the only woman in a room in some meetings and things. But I just said, you know what? Here's what you have to do.
Right.
And this is in the book too. You don't just walk in this stuff. I always say nothing replaces the hard work. So I knew if I had to succeed, I had to do my homework. I had to know my business. I had to know my client's business. I had to know what I was doing all along. Work hard, because that gives you competence. And then you know it. Hey, I know that.
Right.
When I walk in that boardroom or I'm in that situation, I have a right to speak. I have a right to be known because I have something to add, because I really know my stuff. And that leads to confidence. So when you have that, and sometimes you get knocked back and you don't have the confidence, maybe you need to do your homework again. You're in a place you don't know. So I just kind of let all these boo birds and naysayers around me, women can't do this or can't do that. I just kind of let it roll off my back and just kept going, and I felt like I always tried to do the right thing, tried to bring my values into it, and people seemed to like that. They wanted to be around that. But I will say one thing you did say about the checking accounts. So my father died in 1969, and I went literally with my piggy bank, and knowing I was going to get a little veterans check from my dad's death, as well as a little Social Security check. So I had my little checks, my first checks, and my piggy bank, and I walked to the Savings and Loan in Liberty, Texas with this stuff, or maybe I rode my bike, I don't remember. But anyway, I walked in, and this woman who worked there said, Gay, I'm going to open a checking account for you and a savings account. And she did. And so from the time I was 13 years old and I had little checks coming in from my jobs, I had my own checking and savings account.
Wow.
And I had it all from that point on. And which was really interesting, because I didn't think about it at the time that women weren't really supposed to have them. But I don't know, they just said, well, here's poor little Gay, doesn't have a dad anymore. We're going to give her a chance to have her checking account. So I did. Isn't that wild now?
That is wild.
I know.
Yeah.
It was 1969.
Yeah, because it was. It's not a fact that many women in America actually know, and almost no men know this fact. But if you just think about it, it was really hard. If someone was in a bad relationship, they had to go to their dad to say, "I want to get out of this marriage," or their husband,
or if they needed money. You couldn't get a loan.
Right.
You couldn't get a credit card.
Yeah.
I ended up getting all this stuff because I had that checking account, and then somehow things were tied to it. One thing led to another. But if they hadn't given me that first checking account, it would have been years maybe before I'd been able to do anything.
Right.
So, it's really hard for people to grasp for those things now. But it all goes back to, is that an obstacle when you can't get something, or do you just keep doing what you think's right?
Totally. Yeah. I think that's the key message. And, one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing now is that one of the things that's taken kind of root in America and other places in the world is there's a lot of fear around AI. There's the fear around job loss. There's the fear around the science fiction movies in our head, like The Terminator and The Matrix. These stories, by the way, are as old as the written word.
How about Forbidden Planet? Way back in the day, way before any of us. Yeah, there's always been these kind of scary things that are going to happen to us.
Right. And you know, in America, like right now, only 25% of people are positive on AI, which is crazy.
Really? Just 25%?
Just 25%.
They're scared
now,
of it.
It makes sense if you think about what the programming they're receiving. They're being told, like, it's going to replace your job. The machines are going to kill us all. You know, you've got over 30,000 people that signed this letter in 2023, just like pause all AI development. You know, we're so far past that moment. I mean, GPT-4 was the moment when that came out. You know, now we're on GPT 5.6, you know, the Soul model, and, you know, Anthropic's got Fable, Kimi K3 just came out. So we're just like so far past those moments. And last I checked, it's over $7 trillion worldwide of funding that's going towards the creation of AGI. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, how you see this moment, because one of the things that I think about in terms of a synchronicity, you know, intersection with your book is this is a moment of maximum agency. And one lasting legacy that Josh Bear left is the weekend before he crossed over, literally the weekend before, as I was in a board meeting with him the day before he crossed over, is that he personally rebuilt the entire capitalfactory.com website using AI. He budgeted. He did it by himself. He had budgeted 6 months, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Sure.
And he was like, I'm just going to do it by myself. He did the whole thing on the weekend. If you go to capitalfactory.com right now, that is all Josh. And he was so proud of it. Like, he told me, you know, the day before in this board meeting, and I was just like, Josh, like, that's amazing. That lesson is so incredible, because what he was teaching people is agency. He was teaching people, he had just turned 50. He's like, I can do this, you can do this. And that's one of the things that he was always telling people. He's like, I believe in you. He was like one of the first believers in so many, trying to teach people agency. And on this podcast, I've talked about so many times about, like, if I was a plumber, here's how I would use AI. And it's for everybody.
Brett, I see AI as just the next wave of technology. And when the internet started, like I said, we were on the ground floor of that, as far as, you know, not the real ground floor. I mean, obviously it was being used by the military and a lot of other uses way before us. But as it became part of something that could be used for marketing, instead of saying, no, we're not going to do that, you know, we said, how do we do it? Who can do it? We would search everywhere for people who were interested in it, who could actually make it happen. And so one thing led to another. And the philosophy at my company, T3, was always to say, what's next? How do we innovate? Whatever's coming down our way, we better learn how to do it or be the first. So when mobile came out, who would have believed everybody be buying stuff on a phone? Are you kidding me? I mean, you know, it's just, we knew it was going to happen. In fact, you know, you talk about Bazaar Boys. I'll never forget, JCPenney was one of our clients, and they were an early adopter of Bazaar Boys, and we learned to work with that. What are we going to learn from that? How can we make our ads better? We were always curious about how technology could take us to the next place, because if it could help us relate better or faster or more efficiently with the end consumer, we wanted to know about it. We wanted to do it. We wanted to be a part of it. So we were actually tiptoeing around what the beginnings of AI so long ago. I laugh because remember the term cookies?
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that.
Cookies on people on Dell stuff, because we would know if you bought 10 desktops, you're probably going to buy a server.
All right.
So we could serve up things to you. Amazon tricked us into this so long ago. They knew if you like this book, you might want that one. Or if you want this product, you may want this one. And so we've all been lulled into this kind of technology that allowed us to do things. You know, GPS on our phones. 7-Eleven was a client. We knew when someone was driving by who had the app, we could just say, hey, it's cold today. Want a free cup of coffee? You know, it's just all knowing where people were, what was going on, and how do you use that in a way that the customer would be okay with it, you know, not creep them out. So I look at AI as I hope it does help people. I hope it enables technology to move in a faster way. Maybe it saves lives. We can do so many things faster, and probably like just some of the old jobs we'd say back in the day, well, we don't need that anymore because we have this to do it for us. So AI, yes, it does replace certain projects, techniques, skill sets, and there's no doubt about it. I still think, my personal opinion is that we need human creativity and our brain to help put all this together. But certainly if it speeds things up. I mean, my kids own a piece of property I gave them. And so I talked to my son and I said, do you have an attorney, a real estate attorney, to make sure your contract's in shape? He said, no, I ran it through AI and it looks really good. And I said, well, maybe you should just, so they did take it to attorney. He said, I have nothing hardly to add to this.
Right.
I mean, that's one simple example, but there's so many things, like even with my newsletter, we'll run through like, does this headline make more sense? How about, have people talked about this? And it doesn't mean it shapes my words exactly, but it certainly does inform me, because now I feel like I have a big focus group out there, massive, that can bring me information. So I'm not afraid of it. I'm not the biggest adopter, but I just see it as being something that we're, in a few years or a year, who knows, we'll talk about that like, oh, it's not the internet. Well, nobody talks about the internet anymore that way. It'll just be that one more thing, and who knows what's next.
Right.
That's how I feel about it.
No, I completely agree. And, one thing, just to go back in the time machine a little bit, is I apologized to my brother-in-law for this. His name's Brad. Jeffrey Hinton was one of the signers of that letter. He's known as the quote unquote godfather of AI. And I'm talking about the letter of the moratorium call of like pause all AI development. And if you go back, over a decade, he was forecasting that the job of radiologist would be over. He was like, this job's going away. Yeah. And I bought into that. And I met with Brad back then, and I was like, Brad, you have to stop being a radiologist. Like, this job is going away. The machines will take it over. It's just pattern recognition. And what has actually happened, you speak about creativity, is human plus AI has created much better outcomes for radiology. One without the other is not as good of an outcome. And the demand for radiology jobs is off the charts. We have a massive shortage of radiologists. And one of the things happening right now is that we've never had a higher spike in the past 5 years of engineering jobs. Because now each individual engineer can do so much more. And that's what happened with radiology, is that ultimately it created the need for many more scans because the capability of the scans went up, and it created more demand, and also just the ability to do more volume, and more scans creates better health outcomes. And so now there's been the skyrocketing demand for radiology scans. But I think it's the same way in the ad agency world. I think that, we have this real gift in terms of our creativity, our intuition, and people want that human touch. Like in in an agency, they want someone to be able to sit down with them and collaborate with them, but to not use these super powerful tools makes no sense either.
And a lot of things that we used to have developers do so many things that then you could just breeze through. I mean, we didn't need to do some of those steps. It's just like getting smarter, really, and how to use it. But I do love the idea of AI becoming more of a creative partner, let's say, with us in my world, or in what I see. And just thinking of medicine, I mean, look how technology has improved our outcomes. Has given us information we would have never had. It's not going to save everybody's life, but it certainly is just huge leaps from when I was growing up and what we go through. And so it's truly amazing. And for us to kind of put the collar, on technology that could really make a difference and make people's lives better. I can't see that. But I'm just not afraid of things like that. I just never have been, because I always think, well, I'll just keep doing my own deal, and I'll keep finding new ways to express my own creativity.
Yeah, adaptability, flexibility, like such important human characteristics, like to really cultivate
People
in
are
yourself.
afraid, let's be honest. And
Yeah.
you say love conquers fear. People do have fear. And we all
Right.
do. I
Yeah.
mean, there's fear that's just inherent, and we can't always get away from that. My husband had a horrific illness, and I was afraid all the time of how I was going to respond to that, how I was going to deal with it, and if I had the energy to see him through it, and he didn't make it through. It was a very deadly diagnosis, actually, but it took over 7 years. But, and I'm going to jump a little bit to your whole concept of love conquering fear. I could not have gone through that if it wasn't for the fact I loved him so much.
Yeah, of course.
And love was really not just for him. It was just for all this community around me and everything that was happening. And it got me through it. Otherwise, there's no way I would have made that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a rough ride.
Yeah. I feel fortunate that I at least got to meet him.
Yeah.
He was, he was tall.
He was.
He was
a
how
true
tall was he? He was
Texan.
like-
He was about 6'3.5".
Yeah.
He was a true Texan. Grandfather was a real cowboy. I'm not talking about cowboy. I mean, rode the range. He took 7 herds of longhorns up the trail and back to Kansas after the Civil War. And so amazing stories in their
Yeah.
family. And that's part of kind of the Cowgirl Power book too, because his mom was a real cowgirl, and I'd learned from her and along the way. And so he was a 5th generation Texas rancher. That's their life. That's what they do.
Yeah. So cool. I do want to double click a little bit on what you do at UT because it's so awesome. Tell us about your program there.
Well,
that
there's a
you've
couple
endowed,
things.
yeah.
After I sold the business, you kind of step back and say, of course, Lee was so sick, so that dominated a lot of my time. But I knew he and I had always talked about what can we do to take leadership to another level.
Yeah.
And so while he was really getting ill, I just doubled down on that. And so my first opportunity that I created, actually, you have to create your opportunities,
Right.
Was during COVID. And I was watching how women were dropping out of the workplace. And I don't mean just entry level or maybe lower paying jobs, women with seniority, women with leadership. And they were just overwhelmed with what they were having to do to get through that awful mess of COVID. So I said, we've got to do something. We got to stop the bleeding here. So I went to the president of the university, Jay Hartz, all the time with a 1-pager. Lee and I always loved 1-pagers. Don't write 16 pages, just get it down on 1 page. And I said, I'd like to put a program together for women like this. And he said, it can go and becomes exec ed. So one thing led to another. My good friend Lynn Utter joined in with me. She's corporate, I'm entrepreneur, and we teach the program. We brought in a lot of fabulous people to help us with it. But it's now its 7th cohort, and we've seen dramatic difference. So the reason I tell that story is it led to the other thing. I love the adjacent possible concept.
Yeah.
One thing's always just one step from the other. We don't just dream up something and then all of a sudden, eureka, it's new. Something always morphs from something else. So I was...
Hey, just real quick, sorry. I just want to tell you, I know Lynn. She's also in the Henry Crown Fellowship.
Yes, she
and
is.
So she was the moderator for last year's Aspen Action Forum.
Yeah.
And she is amazing.
Oh, she's a force of
oh
nature
my
for
gosh.
sure. We are so yin and yang though, but we
Yeah.
get along perfectly. I
Yeah.
mean, she's so different than I am, but yet we see the same.
I just saw her last week in Aspen,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
we were remembering Josh, and then remembering Keith Berwick
Yeah.
as well. Keith was like a real force that shaped the program.
Yeah, she's
But she's very special.
She really is, and
Yeah.
a tremendous friend. So anyway, here I am doing this program, and it's going well. And at the same time, I became president of the Texas Exes during all this, and I started having more interaction with students. So the 40-acre scholars, the Texas Cowboys we talked about, some of these other students, different groups on campus, I could name a lot. And I started talking to these students, and I thought, wow, if I could take some of this stuff that we're doing over here, the women's program, and tailor it for them, they're ready for this. They need right now to hear this, because what I'd love for them to do is have a lifetime of leadership and not be taught leadership training way out 10, 15 years into your career. And so I decided to put my money where my mouth was, and I gave an endowment, and it ended up going and becomes a manage it. But it's a program for juniors and seniors, only 40 at a time. And we draw from all the schools at the university, male and female. And so you've got engineers, you've got social work, you got architects, you got, government majors, business majors. And they all come together and they work on capstone projects, and we teach them these core fundamentals of leadership. And already after 1 year, we're just seeing amazing results.
Yeah.
I mean, they just soaked it in, and they're doing things with it. And, some went on to great jobs. Some are doing great leadership things on campus. And so I really believe in this concept that we've got to teach people leadership.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot by what you're doing and other people around you, and some people have more opportunities than others, but you've got to give them core values and principles about what it takes to be a leader.
Right.
And hear from real people. You came to speak last year. I mean, it's all about bringing in folks who've been out there, they've taken huge risks as leaders, and I want the students at that age to start to really internalize that and then take it with them. And then we'll keep them together with alumni groups and all that. So I will continue to support this. I help teach. I'm there every Tuesday. I don't just give the money.
Sign me up again.
Yeah, I will.
I loved it. Remind me of the name.
They're
of the
called
program.
Texas Trailblazers.
Texas Trailblazers.
Because I've been called the Trailblazer.
I did nominate someone. I don't know if you saw that I nominated
you did?
someone. Yeah, it was a while back.
Okay, I'll have to see.
Yeah, but I did nominate someone.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But
We've got
what
some
a
great
special
ones.
program.
They're
it was so
wonderful.
cool when they contacted me on nominating them. I was like, I actually know her.
Well, it's a really great
Yeah.
program, and we'll see how, we're going to our second year of that one, but I already see it's working.
Yeah,
And what's interesting, Brett, is, you studied at UT, a lot of people study at great universities. And even though you can be in student organizations or whatever group you want to be in or other activities, you're kind of siloed. And if you're really a student, you're siloed in your college. So the business kids hang out with the business kids. The engineers are over there all the time in the engineering building. Art students, my gosh, they're working 24/7 on their projects, and drawing, and musicians and all that. I can go down the list. But they don't necessarily get to spend that kind of time with other leaders in other areas of the university.
Yep.
And that's what they love. And they work on these capstone projects together, and they get to know each other, and the support and the diversity of thought is just stunning.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, you know this as an entrepreneur, but companies are not formed by just business people or art people. They're formed by people that are multidisciplinary. And one of the first things I did when I only did it for 1 year, but I was entrepreneur residence for 1 year. I really wanted to see what it was like. And one of the first things I did is they gave me this office, and it was like really nice by the tower. And I said, give it away. I said, I don't want it. And they were like, why don't you want it? I'm like, I don't want to be in a place where people feel intimidated at all. Like entrepreneurship is all about, like, we're sitting at the table, next to each other, not across from each other. And so I'm like, where do the students hang out? They're like, well, the Student Activity Center. So I'm like, well, that's where my office will be. And they're like, well, there is no office there. And I'm like, I'll just sit there and
sit at the table.
And that's where I'll meet people. And one of the first things I did, because it was in the business program that I had this position, is I made it open to all schools. I was like, I don't care which school you're in, as long as you're really serious about entrepreneurship, I'll meet with you. And I did funny things like on Twitter, I would post like that you could sign up for office hours sometimes at like 11:30 p.m. at night. And people are like, why do you do it then? I'm like, I want the people that are really hardcore, that are actually like really into this. And it was amazing, meeting with all these students from all these different departments. And you're doing that with Trailblazers, like to say, no, this is not just a business program.
And
this
that's
is across.
what worked. And you're so right, Brett, about as an entrepreneur and you're starting things, it's not just one mind. You've got to have all these different ways of thinking. And that's why I'm really big on Myers-Briggs or some sort of type indicators, because that's just the first step to saying, gosh, we do think differently, and we do have different strengths. And so that's how I built T3.
Yeah.
It was about always, and then someone didn't have to agree with you, and that's okay. We invited friendly discourse and debates, and it worked. And so this is what I want the students to feel, is that you're right. When you get out, if you're in a dynamic organization, everybody shouldn't be the same. You're not all one type, or you're not all one discipline. And it's great to bring in the different ideas. So that's what I'm trying to teach them as well. One thing that's interesting about the University of Texas, especially if you're from here or been here a long time, it's just kind of part of us. And I was meeting with the new dean of the business school, Brad Stotts, and he was originally here and then went away to North Carolina. But what he's so excited about is really connecting the McCombs Business School to Austin business. And we need to be more interactive with the university. For people who aren't, if you didn't go there, that's okay. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do that will energize you on any topic that you're interested in. And so there's a lot of opportunity just as a person living in Austin to not go, oh, that's that big university. It sits, off, the drag or while it's a amazing research institution. And what's happening with what Michael and Susan Dell have done, with the amount of money they are giving to make this a true medical center, is pretty astounding.
It is.
It's stunning. And what I'm excited about is that if the dream of this can really come to fruition, you take the technology at UT, the research, the sciences at UT, and try to marry that with the actual student doctors, with the faculty, with all the people in the medical program, and fast speed some of these things. We talked about how technology can really change outcomes and change medicine. So you have the humanity, you have that part of it, but you also have this research facility right there. And this is unusual for this to happen in such close proximity like what we have here in Austin. So I'm very excited about that part too. And just being around UT, being around these young students, they're so encouraging. People get so down on what's going to happen. And again, the naysayers about where our future's going. And I just think they need leadership. As much as I can push leaders out there, I think that's my part. But you would be, anyone, amazed at the level of thinking and for their age that they have. They're so bright, and it's just really encouraging to me. It's just like wonderful to be around.
It's the best time ever for UT in terms of the resources it has. It's got the second largest endowment in the nation for any university. It looks like it might surpass Harvard, actually. Which would be incredible, but I think it's Harvard, then UT, then Yale. And you have as you mentioned, the teaching hospital. That's 2.5 million square feet, and it's the largest project in UT's history. But just to put that in perspective, the biggest downtown building is around 900,000 square feet in Austin. So we're talking about 2.5 times the size. And the green field that's in the middle of it is like the size of a football field. So that's going to be incredible. I think they're really shooting for being in the top 10 in the world for that. I've covered on this podcast, I'm on the executive advisory board for that initiative, and I had Ping Ong on the podcast. He lives in Singapore, but he went to UT.
Yes, I know.
And we were talking a lot about how they're really going for AI, robotics to lead this initiative. Of course, Michael is pushing that with Susan Dell as well. And they have a real opportunity. One of the things that's so cool from an art perspective with it, I'm sure you're well aware of all this, but just for the listeners, is that they have really analyzed like the top hospitals that, get the top rankings and look at their hospital rooms, and they're very kind of sterile and not very homely. And what they've designed here, it looks like a Four Seasons or something. It's like really nice,
comforting,
right? But the technology really embedded in there. So the design thinking that's going into it, Deborah is an interior designer, so I naturally think about these things, which I did not at all before we got married. But there's a really intentional design. And one of my very good friends, Pariah Beam, who was on episode 31 of this podcast, just gave a really big gift. And that episode is amazing because she's a great biotech entrepreneur. She goes into how big the opportunity is in women's healthcare. It's
There's
crazy.
a huge opportunity there
Huge.
because it's so
Yeah.
far behind in research and all of
Yes.
those issues which we've known for a long time.
Yeah, one of the things she said in that episode, which was shocking to me, is that there was a peak where about 2.5% of VC capital went to that area. Now it's down to less than 1%. Even though it's half the population, it makes no sense. I mean, it's
No,
like this is a huge financial opportunity. So people, if they're interested, should tune into that. So I'd love to go into just something that is really important, I think, during this time. So the reason that we should talk about spirituality as well as what do you think this reality is that there's a lot of talk and a lot of fear on, are we going to create machines as conscious as we are? And again, these come out of movies like The Terminator and The Matrix. And a lot of people in Silicon Valley are making this assumption where it's just like, we just need to replicate how the brain works. And the reality is that thinking is a whole body experience. Like the second most neurons in our body are in our gut, and the third most are in our heart. And we have neurons actually all over our body. It is true that the most neurons are in our brain, but there's lots of things that determine thinking. And then there's this whole different dimension of thinking that I really think is very real, which is I believe we have a soul. I very much believe in God. Now, some people be triggered by that word, but to me, it's synonymous with consciousness and the universe. I think whatever God is, it's this force that loves us unconditionally. And I'm just curious your views on whatever you think this is, like, you know, this reality that we're living in is, and you know, this is the most important question, I think, of all. It's the one that we've asked since the beginning of humanity. But we're in the age now where I think we're in the age of the great philosophers coming to roost. Like, you know, why are we here? Does any of this matter? Like, are we just in this cold, dead universe and on this random, you know, rock, and like we're just some cosmic accident, which is, you know, what the materialists, like the hardcore materialists, believe, that we had this Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, and a bunch of random collisions eventually made chemistry, eventually led to
One
simple
cell
life,
led to another one,
and here we are.
Well, you know, we all wrestle with those questions. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. I mean, we are always, you know, you even look up at the sky. Remember how you look up, who am I in this big universe? Everything's, what else is out there? You know, all these questions you ask, and there's so many things you never will really know in your own lifetime. But I feel like from the time I was a child, there was spirituality in my life, and it wasn't necessarily hardcore dogma, you know, this is it. But my mother had bone cancer at 12, and she lost her arm about the time I lost my dad. She had her right arm removed, and it was a huge issue, of course, for her life. It just turned everything around, and she was really depressed and almost dropped out of the human race pretty much.
Wow.
But here's what happened. And the reason I'm telling this is because sometimes I think, and I believe this, that if we keep moving forward in love in some way, the best we can, God or the world or the spirits around us will put someone there as the messenger to move you ahead.
Yep.
So her story was this, and she didn't tell me this until I was a little older, but she said, you realize that I almost just kind of checked out. Yeah. And I couldn't face going to school. I didn't, you know, she was in the 7th grade. How horrible. So by the time she was a freshman in high school, she'd still made it through. She was in a typing class. Okay, now think about that. They made everybody take typing. And so she had one arm. So she sat in the back of the room and kind of pecked with her left arm. Right after class, a few days in, the teacher took her out in the hall. And she said, Dorothy, that was her name. Everybody called her Dottie later. Dorothy Jean. She said, you're going to sit in the back of this room and feel sorry for yourself and waste your entire life. She said, I'm watching it right now. Or you can get up tomorrow with a new attitude and say, I'm going to make the best of all this. I'm going to be the best I can be. I'm going to have a great life. She said, it's your choice.
Wow. What a lesson.
My mom goes home, and she really internalized this and thought, I've got to turn my life around. I can't be, the disabled, the poor person who can't do something for themselves. And she just literally turned it around. And she had a dynamic life. I mean, people could not believe all the things she did. But the reason I tell that story is that so many times when I would think I would just hit a wall, I would just ask God, this presence larger than me, someone's going to come in my life, something will happen or an event that's going to help me move through this. And it always does.
Right.
And you can call it prayer, you can call it your own self-reflection, but I really believe there's something bigger than me. I always have. And, I went to the Methodist church when I was growing up. Later I became Episcopalian. I wear a crucifix. I'm not a Catholic, but it's to remind me to pray and that there is something bigger than me.
Yeah.
And so that's how I've lived my life. But it really all centers around, in your concept, it's really about love. Love does pull you through. And if you can go forward, even if it's like you're in quicksand, moving ahead with love, somehow the right person, the right thing, or something will come along. Even in our most desperate hours, there's always a way.
Right.
And somehow, even if we're dying, I think there's that last moment of that. So I don't know. I'm just, and I had a near-death experience about a year ago that really woke me up.
I remember you telling me about it when I was in your classroom. And it was incredible because you were at that point my 12th or 13th friend that told me about it. And if you go back to before 2025, I had zero friends tell me a single one. And some of these people had been friends for 10 to 20 years. And it wasn't that I think I was like, the type of person that hopefully was projecting that you couldn't tell that to, but I wasn't creating the opening to talk about these things, and so maybe they just thought I was caught up in the same, capitalist construct where I was speaking at a business conference recently with this woman, Sol Rashidi. She was on the podcast, and it was Culturati, Culturati,
Yes.
Eugene Sepulveda's event.
Oh, yeah.
And we're there speaking about love on stage. And so many people came up to us afterwards and said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you're speaking about love at a business conference. I'm like, this is 2026. I was like, at what point did we say you couldn't go into business with your full body and your full humanity?
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, T3 was all about that.
Of course.
I loved it, and I loved the people. I really did. I mean, it was genuine. But, going back to kind of what happened to me last year, I mean, going through Lee's illness was just, he was still alive when this happened. And it was challenged me beyond anything I thought I had in me. And we get pushed in life like that. Sometimes you think, oh gosh, what's the end of this? And what am I going to learn from it? And I did learn a lot from it, which we could share later. But for now, I want to tell you about what happened. I was literally driving in to Austin from my ranch for the very first night of Trailblazers. So excited. And I stopped off at my vet clinic, which is at a very dangerous intersection on the way into town. And I pulled in and I was coming out and I scooted across and an 18-wheel truck hit me on the side, right here.
Yeah.
I spun around.
On the driver's side.
Yeah.
Wow.
I spun around and all I could remember was, I'm going to die. Because my head hit the windshield, and it did hit, because I was blood stirring on my face, and I thought, I'm dying. And at that moment, and it's real, there was a white wing, a white ring, not like, it wasn't like just blacking out and have a white, you know what I'm saying, where you're kind of unconscious from it. There was literally a white circle that went around me and held me, and I said, I'm going to live. And I knew at that moment that I didn't go farther through the windshield. I didn't farther go into the steering wheel. It was right at that moment of impact. And It was amazing.
Yeah.
I literally walked out of the vehicle. Now, the EMS came and they wanted to take me to the hospital. And I said, no, I can't, because I've got to go teach my
You've got to go to class.
And I did. And I did do that class that night. Of course, the next day I woke up just bungled up and terrible and had to ended up having hand surgery. I had a boot on my leg with fractures for 6 months. But I lived.
Yeah.
And it was so stunning to me that I got the message at that point that there's something much bigger than me that said, you still have some place and something to do here. And you got to go do it. So it was just amazing to me. And I couldn't have made it up.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't like, some people say, oh, well, I've heard of people, in an accident, they'll kind of white out from it. No, it was not that.
Right.
It wasn't like everything went white or black or something or color. It's just literally this white swoosh went around me.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was alive and I knew it.
Yeah. I mean, I completely.
I don't know if it's guardian angel. I don't know who or what it was.
Well, it was definitely.
But there was something there that stopped me from dying.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something like that. And I've had experiences like that. I think my life's been saved multiple times. I'll tell you
Mine
one.
probably had too, but that's the one most recent I remember.
I'll tell you one that was like very inexplicable like that, where I just couldn't even believe it. I was in Hawaii, and I was hiking up this cliff on lava rock with our son in my arms. And
was he young then?
He was just a baby. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I mean, really young. Like, I don't even know, maybe like 1.5. And I was holding him in my arms, and I'm going up this lava rock, and I slipped, and I was going to fall like 25 feet. I was like, oh man, this is going to be bad. And a hand pushed me. No kidding. Like, pushed my back. And I was like, what just happened? So I started talking with Deborah about it. She's like, I mean, it was really wild. I'm getting chills, like, just telling you this, but I was saved in that moment, and he was saved. So I very much know that there are forces out there that we don't understand, which is incredible.
My airbags didn't go off. It was almost a brand new Lincoln.
Wow.
There's no reason why they shouldn't have gone off. They did not. So I was literally going to keep going through the windshield.
Oh, yeah.
I felt it, even with my seatbelt, because the impact was so strong. It totaled the car. And no airbags.
Wow.
So it was truly a moment. Yeah.
Have you had experiences since Lee crossed over that you felt his presence?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel I feel my mom, my dad's. I mean, I've had lots of experiences.
I've always felt them. My godparents. I mean, people who were really close to me, and people talk about cardinals, but I still do. I see the cardinals as sometimes just showing up in my window.
Yeah.
I kind of have a feeling of that, but this is something really interesting. So Lee, I said, grew up in South Texas, and they had a huge ranch down there, and the Coahuiltecan natives nomadically wandered through there for thousands of years, and they made arrowheads all the time, and instruments and things they needed. And so our greatest fun sometimes would be to go out to the ranch, especially after it rained, because it would wash the earth open and just find all these fabulous arrowheads and different Indian artifacts is what we call them. But anyway, it was such an amazing thing. So when we bought the property in the late 90s outside of here, the hill country, we kept looking for arrowheads, and there never was one, ever. I mean, we searched that place. Lee and I both did. And we said, well, I guess the reason was the water was down below, and we never really had enough water here that's where they would hang out, and make their tools and things. And it was about probably in March, Lee died in December, like in March. And I was walking the dogs along this area I've walked hundreds of times. And I looked down, and there was one. And I started crying.
Yeah.
I said, Lee, it's here.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I knew at that moment he was with me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so
he went to go find it.
He did. Probably put it there for me.
Yeah.
But I called the kids, and they said, no one would have been happier today if you could run up to the house and shown him that. So, because it was a big deal to us, something we shared. And so just moments like that. I have more, but I mean, and sometimes when I'm teaching the leadership classes, I just hear his voice and I quote him. He was funny and insightful. and very, supportive of me,
Yeah.
which is another thing for women. I must say this, it helps a lot
Right.
when you have a partner who supports you. Fighting and
Heck
going
yeah.
upstream in that is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you believe in yourself and you've got someone behind you that says, or with you or standing by you, that says, we're going to do this or you can do it, it just changes your whole outlook.
Right, right. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I had this experience. I actually tell this in the book last year in the Grand Canyon. It's amazing. Like, that's a great trip. Like, talk about a trip that'll really change your life. I was there for 8 days with this incredible group. There's nothing but human presence because there's no electricity. There's no, flushing toilets. there's no air conditioning, anything. So you're basically out there with no cell connection, just complete and total presence. And there was a guy that was kind of spiritually curious, and I made friends with this woman, Becca. I just saw Becca actually recently in Telluride at the Mountain Film Festival, where our friend Michael Collins serves on the board of directors. He was on this podcast. He's an amazing guy, amazing documentary filmmaker. We're supporting his film on intuition, and he invited us out there. But anyway, so I'm with Becca in the Grand Canyon, and we're talking about signs. Like, she's talking about signs that her dad sends, and I'm talking about signs that my parents send. And this guy's sitting in the middle of us, and so he's asking her, and she said, well, one of the things that's just inexplicable are pennies. Like, my dad always does these crazy things with pennies. And then she's like, Brett, what is it for you? And I'm like, well, it's usually like animals, like, goats, deer, sometimes birds, like, where I can really feel them. And at that moment, this goat appears on the ridge, and it's sunset. And so literally everybody, all 27 of us, look up, and there's this beautiful, like, majestic goat, like, framed on this incredible sunset. I'm like getting chills telling you this. And we all just are just in awe, for like a minute. It's just standing there. And I say to the guy in the middle, I'm like, it's kind of like that, because he's like spiritually curious, but like probably thinks we're a little bit wacky or something. And he told that story at the checkout, like, and it sent him on the journey. So that sign was actually for him. It wasn't for me or Becca. It was for him. And I see the divine as that way. Whatever this is like trying to wake us up. And I think that this AI moment is that. Like, I really think that our ability to create heaven on earth has never been more possible than it's going to be now. And one of the ways I personify it in the book is the country of Chad. We've only had electricity as Homo sapiens for 1.1% of our evolutionary time. So our fear-based center is very well developed. Like, a great form of capitalism, if you just want to maximize money, is, again, hack the biology, hack like where we're weak. And we are fearful because of the fact that we evolved from times where you needed to be more fearful, but we're running on old biology. And so we're in this AI age now where our ability to create abundance, even in a place like Chad, where only 1 in 8 people today have electricity, has never been more possible than is going to be. And AI will eventually be completely embodied with robotics. Quantum computing is going to accelerate it all. And if we create abundance in a place like Chad, or, the places in America that are really suffering, from the opioid crisis, et cetera, like we really create abundance in places like that, what's it going to feel like everywhere else? It will feel like heaven on earth. And the only way we get there, I think, is to allow love to conquer fear. Like, it really is up to us. We have the free will to make that choice. So I see the divine working through us right now, saying, humanity, what do you want to be when you grow up? We got a lot of growing up to do.
I've been asking you this for a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, this has always, I think, been our destiny, is to get to a point like this. And, whether you look at it as metaphorical or mystical, I look at it as both, that we would hit this point in our evolution where through technology, and the discovery of all types of things, we'd hit this point where we have the choice on what we actually want to create. And we've always had that choice. Yeah. If you go back 250 years ago, we just celebrated the 250th of America. 250 years ago, 90% of humanity lived in circumstances where they did not know how to read, 90%, and 80% were in near starvation levels of poverty. So we've had a big rise of a lot of amazingness with science and capitalism, and I'm a big fan of science. But we're in this time where there's also been a lot of choices to put profits over people. And there's a lot of suffering. Teenage girls, for example, on social media, don't ever believe a technologist that tells you that they don't understand what the algorithm's doing, because they all know. I've been programming since I was 7. Yeah. Trust me, they know.
Oh yeah, they know.
So, it's a time of maximum agency. And that's why I wrote the book, is I'm trying to help people wake up and meet this moment.
One of the things I wanted to mention that I've thought about as you were talking, especially about our spirituality, about what's out there and in the world, is many years ago, I guess it was in the 80s, a man named Joseph Campbell, and if you ever read The Power of Myth or studied him.
He's in chapter 1 of my book.
Oh, yeah. Well, I need to read your book.
Yeah.
I'll listen to it. But so about Joseph Campbell, but Bill Moyers did a great
The Hero's Journey.
The Hero's Journey was part of it. And Bill Moyers did a wonderful series of interviews of him. And it was one of the most eye-opening things to me, because I traveled a good bit early on and worldwide traveling. I would watch different cultures and all this stuff. And he really brought it together for me at that point, because we all had kind of the same stories, and we all repeat these stories. That's how we taught. We couldn't read people. It was just the oral tradition and all those things. But it was different cultures finding God and finding spirituality in their way, but it's all the same in a strange way. Not exactly, and there's certain differences, and there's certain things that, I don't know, that certain religions would advocate, but just the underlying truth is there.
Yep.
And it's been there since we can remember any stories. And so I always thought that was a really compelling, thing for me, is to go, okay, we're all one. We have this thing bigger than us, and it's just how we get there.
Yeah. Well, you're going to love the book. I mean, chapter 10 is on religion. And at this point, I've read the Tao Te Ching, the Bhagavad Gita, the Torah, the Bible, a lot of what's in the Quran, a lot of Buddhist texts, etc. And the name Love Conquers Fear comes from that synchronous root that we all share. And I think that's where the truth of God is.
Yes.
And it is a message of agency. We all have the ability to allow love to conquer our own fear. Christianity, the mantra, if you will, I'm using that term pretty loosely, a Sanskrit term, is the kingdom of God is found within.
Yeah.
And there's no amount of external accumulation that we can do to feel worthy to create lasting happiness. It's only whether or not we take the agency to transform ourselves.
So if you know the real meaning behind Cowgirl Power, it's in the book. And I talk about the power is already within you.
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about. Without being overly religious, I said it's there.
It is.
And it's going to come from it within you. You have to just draw it out. You got to believe in yourself. You got to understand that it's there. So that's, kind of where all that came from.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, your book is a message of agency, and spiritual texts are a message of agency. And one of the things that's I think we need to transcend in terms of the dogmatic separation of things is that the people that worship science, which I love science, I really do, there are a lot of times where they're humbled and they're shown that what we thought was true is not true.
Yes.
But with spirituality and religion in particular, I think it's held to the standard of if there's one thing not true in the Bible or something like that, then the whole thing gets thrown out, forgetting the fact that actually the core message is all around agency, and you don't throw all of science out.
No.
You know, and you shouldn't throw all of spirituality out. And I think that that's why I think people are waking up to that, and people are rediscovering spirituality in this moment, which is beautiful. But I think they're also rediscovering it because, again, we're in this time of the great philosophers where it's like, why are we here? You know, and it's frankly because of technology that's happening. Because there is this talk of like, are we just going to create machines that are as sentient as we are? And therefore, you know, we're just biological machines and there's nothing to see outside of that. And people are really trying to figure that out. Yeah. You know, when Demis Hassabis spoke at TED 2 years ago, Chris Anderson was really pressing him to say, Demis, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, what are you trying to figure out in your time at Google by leading all the AI initiatives? And he started talking about the tree of knowledge. And he said, I really want to be able to understand the resolution of the universe at the Planck scale, or the Planck scale. You know, Max Planck, one of the famous patriarchs, if you will, of quantum physics. And, you know, we're in this time where we're all like grappling with, well, actually, what is this reality? Which I think is really beautiful.
It is.
Well, I love your book. I
know I'm going to love your book too.
Yeah, you'll love it.
I want to listen to it. I want to hear you get through the book. I'm going to have to get the audio too.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like I didn't start digging into your book until before this. And I've known you for a long, long time. Yeah. And you know, it's a great book. It's a really great book. And it's one where I told Rachel before, I was like, you've got to read this book. But now I'm going to be like, you definitely have to, at a minimum, listen to it on Audible because Gay reads it and your voice is amazing on it. It's so well done.
I think it's kind of funny because it's East Texan accent. But you know what? It's the story. It's who I am.
It sounds amazing to me. It's really, really well done. And I love you playing along here. My mom would be so proud of this moment that this was her favorite photo of me, and reading your book, it brought me straight back to my little Brit cowboy roots. Time I'd wear boots and like go out and
it's kind of your
dance.
Your real cowboy days, you know, your real Texan days.
I haven't thought about little cowboy Brett in a long time.
Well, the funniest thing was, I was saying my parents moved to Texas, and I'm a first generation Texan in my family. Yeah. And the funniest thing about it was that they wanted me to be a little Texan. Mm-hmm. So I talk about being with my godfather and riding horses, and yeah, I was really doing all that. But my parents dressed me in these little cowgirl outfits all the time. And I always show this picture when I do a speech and say, yes, that was me, the little cowgirl, and that's not a Halloween costume. I wore those clothes a lot as a child because my parents thought it was great that I would wear my little red cowboy girl boots or whatever, and my little fringe skirts and hats and stuff, and they paraded me around town, you know, as a cowgirl.
That's so funny.
It was funny.
Well, I love your heart, Gay. I love all the light you put out in the world. I love all the stuff you're doing for UT. It's like incredible. Like the students are so lucky to have you, and it's so cool. The people you're bringing in, I mean, it's an honor. When you ask me to do that, you're getting probably quick yeses when you're going out there.
Yeah, we do, and the students bless me though. Mm-hmm. I learn so much from them. Yeah, and they restore my confidence in where we're going. Yeah, they're not afraid of AI. Yeah, you know, they did the cutest thing. We have a cabinet now, a special cabinet we put together, the Trailblazers, and so they did this cute AI generated cartoon of them in the cabinet. And I just love it, you know. And so those are the kinds of things that years ago my art directors would have slaved over and put together all these drawings and made it all work, and they did it within like 15 minutes. Yeah. And it was just adorable, you know. And I thought it was just great that they can do that. Yeah. I think our creativity is going to go off the charts.
with AI. But again, it's human plus AI that's going to make that happen. It's not just outsourcing the whole thing.
No.
But it's being able to do things much faster, which will lead to more creativity because you can test a lot more ideas, you know.
Exactly.
I mean, the ad agencies that are really getting with that are going to be the dominant ad agencies of the future. There's no doubt.
I agree.
Well, cool. Well, this was a real pleasure. I really appreciate it.
I could sit here and talk to you
I
into
know.
the night. But we have a lot to talk about, but it's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Love Conquers Fear. That was an amazing episode. I absolutely love Gay's heart. Definitely tune in to her book. I can tell you firsthand, it is really, really hard to read your own book, but it's really fun to listen to her book on Audible. That's the main format that I use because I read a lot of books and I like to be kinetic when I'm learning. I like to go on hikes. I like to do the laundry, you know, just be in motion as I'm reading, and it's really special when the author reads it. Thanks again for all the love you're giving me. I really, really appreciate it. I am now getting many messages every day from people that have read the book and really are giving me a lot of love back for putting it out there in the world and doing tons of speaking. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate the support. I'm doing this to try to help humanity have the heart shift so that we make it to that beautiful age of abundance for all, which will be like heaven on earth. So thank you.